Hi everyone, Professor Gustin here, and we're in the Chemistry of Life, and I'm going to work on sections 2.6 and 2.7 for this video. And so we're on our last two groups of organic molecules. Give yourself a second, see if you can name the four groups of organic molecules. Give you a second to do that. Carbohydrates, lipids. Now we're going to talk about proteins, and then we'll talk about nucleic acids. So here we are on the proteins, and whenever I teach proteins, one of the first things I think of is a quote I heard somebody say, and they said, when you look in the mirror, you see protein. We're made mostly of protein. Proteins are a major structural molecule in our body. And, when we eat meat, you're thinking, oh, I'm eating meat so I can get protein. What is meat? Meat is muscles. Muscles are made mostly of protein. So protein is really important, and it's made of chains of subunits called amino acids. Remember, we said many of the organic molecules, 3 of our 4 groups, are made of chains of subunits. So the carbohydrates, let's see, what were the subunits of the carbohydrates? They were monosaccharides. So the subunits of proteins are what we call amino acids. So remember, our 4th group of organic molecules are called nucleic acids, and a lot of times people get amino acids and nucleic acids mixed up. So amino acids are the subunits of proteins. And our proteins are important for all sorts of things, including structure. So our muscles, our skin has a lot of protein in it. Movement being the muscles. Our hormones, some of those are proteins. We said some are steroids. And remember, steroids are lipids. But we also have a lot of hormones that are proteins. Enzymes. We're going to talk a little bit more about enzymes. Enzymes are chemicals that conduct our metabolism, all the chemical reactions in our cells. So we'll talk a lot more about enzymes, but they're made of proteins. Antibodies that fight off pathogens in our blood are proteins. We've got all sorts of transport molecules in our cell membranes that move molecules in and out of cells. They're proteins. We said amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. And you do not have to memorize these. There's like 22 different kinds of amino acids. And look at that. There's a carbon. Here's like a general structure. They've got carbon and hydrogen, so they're organic molecules. But there's lots of different amino acids. So there's 20 different ones that you can hook together in big long chains and make proteins. And so this is actually, should say 2.6 right here. Describe the unique characteristics of protein shape and why the shape of a protein is important. So we've talked about, we looked at carbohydrates and we looked at lipids, and they have one steroid kind of looks like the others. And one monosaccharide, you put big chain of it, you get a polysaccharide. But overall, it's kind of more the chemical structure, the chemical composition that gives that molecule its unique function. Proteins, actually, depending on what amino acids they're made of, they can fold in unique ways. So this picture, they're trying to show you here that every protein is a chain of amino acids. So each one of these circles is an amino acid. So we've got a chain of amino acids, but depending on what amino acids you have, it might cause the protein to coil. They call that a helix. And so here they're showing you like a picture where, there's a coil of a protein, but then that also folds into another 3-dimensional shape. And so here's it's showing you that each protein, depending on its amino acid sequence, has a unique shape. And this is a much more detailed protein drawing generated by using a lot of data and a lot of fancy science. But you can see here's the line, this yellow line and the blue line. They're just chains of amino acids. There's big long chains of amino acids. And some of the parts of the chains will coil into a helix. Some will just look kind of random. Some will fold back and forth. But the shape of a protein is going to determine what it does. Okay, So describe the unique characteristics of protein shape and why shape is important. I think that was the same. Whoops. What's going on? Okay. So I just want to reiterate, a protein's three-dimensional shape is closely linked to its function. And so in order to have a normal function, and we'll talk about that during the semester a couple times, but in order for a protein to have a normal function, it's got to have a unique shape. Sometimes a protein can become denatured. The change in the shape of the protein is what we call denaturing. And not just even this any change, but an unfolding. See how this is all kind of folded up in a very distinct way? Once it's denatured, look at that. You don't have all the nice little tight turns and all that. And once you disrupt the shape of a protein, you're going to disrupt its function. And the kinds of things that disrupt protein shape are things like changes in temperature, like if it gets too hot, changes in pH, you put it in an acidic environment. The best example I can think of that's easy for you guys to understand with limited science background would be egg whites. Egg whites or egg albumin is mostly protein. And that egg albumin is folded up in a very coiled way, and it's really springy. And it does two things. One is by being a very coiled, springy protein, it can trap water. And so an egg white is there surrounding a chick as it develops. And the water in the egg white is the water that the chick's going to use to grow. In addition, the egg might fall off the nest or get bumped, and you don't want to damage the chick. So this springy protein, this albumin, is going to help cushion the chick. If you spread that, you heated up that egg white, and you know what happens to that. If you fry an egg, the albumin goes from clear to very white. And when that albumin protein is all folded up, it's nice and clear and springy. When you cook it, the protein becomes denatured. And all those protein molecules kind of line up together and prevent light from passing through them. They can't hold water very well, and they're no longer very cushiony. They're getting kind of hard. So the egg white, when you cooked it, became denatured. I wanted to show you a protein that's really common in the human body called collagen. And you might have gotten shampoos or hand creams or things that say they've got collagen in them. This is the most abundant protein in the body. Some people will get collagen injections, like when they're getting older and they've got wrinkles, they might get collagen injections in their skin. And so it's to kind of puff it up. But collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. And these are collagen fibers. So a lot of our skin and organs and all have a lot of these collagen fibers. Remember we said proteins are really important structural molecules. So collagen's really important. These fibers are made of protein, and they help build the structures. If you look at the picture of these two women, here's a younger woman and an older woman, and the older woman's got more wrinkles. Well, what happens as you get older is these proteins, these collagen fibers, start stretching out a little bit. They start wearing out, and they don't hold the skin as tightly as they did in the past. So it's just kind of a natural process of aging. There's also, if you look at this guy's got something, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But this is a condition that's genetic, where you don't have enough collagen, or your collagen, you don't make it correctly. And so normally most of us can't stretch our skin like that. Probably all of us can't. But because the collagen is really tough, and it's going to prevent your skin from stretching too far, which is a good thing. But if you have this syndrome, you don't make your proteins normally. It's a genetically inherited disease. And you can see how his skin stretches abnormally. So collagen is a really important protein, and in fact, the most abundant protein in the body. So there we go. Check your progress. Go look in your book, and you'll see, describe the major functions of protein. See if you can recite those. I'm on section 2.7, and we're going to talk about our last group of organic molecules called the nucleic acids. So I'm going to do it one more time. Say it out loud, your 4 groups of organic molecules. Carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So the nucleic acids, you've heard of DNA. And you might even know DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, but if you just want to call it DNA, that's fine with me. And you probably might have even heard of RNA, ribonucleic acid. And then a third one called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. If you just know the abbreviations, you're good. So all 3 of these are nucleic acids, and they have subunits called nucleotides. Remember, carbohydrates have subunits called monosaccharides. Proteins have subunits called amino acids, and nucleic acids have subunits called nucleotides. So when we look at DNA, you might have learned that DNA is a molecule that has a double helix. It's got 2 chains of nucleotides. So here's one down this way, and here's one this way. One nucleotide is circled by the box. So DNA is composed of 2 chains of nucleotides. RNA is composed of 1 chain of nucleotides. There's 1 nucleotide right there. So what's the difference between DNA, RNA, and ATP? DNA is what we call our genetic code. It's the instructions on how to make all of our cells. You inherited these instructions from the egg and the sperm from your parents that made you. So you inherited DNA from your parents, and they gave you the instructions on how to make you. And so DNA is your genetic code for your cells. We have those same instructions in every one of our cells in our body. Oh, yeah, every one of our cells in the body, almost every cell. I'll give you some exceptions later in the semester. When you hear about your chromosomes, the chromosomes are made primarily of DNA. Oh, there's a subunit of a nucleic acid. What did you call that? A nucleotide. Okay. RNA is a temporary copy of a piece of DNA. And later in the semester, we're going to talk about how DNA is used to make RNA, and RNA is used to make proteins. DNA has the instructions on how to make all the proteins. RNA is a temporary copy of a piece of DNA, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, so I don't expect you to have a complete understanding of that right now. And then ATP is just 1 nucleotide. It just happens to be a particular one. And ATP doesn't have to do with our genetic information. It has to do with energy. And so ATP is an important energy carrying molecule in cells, but it happens to be a nucleic acid. And we're going to talk a little bit more about ATP too, but all I want to tell you right now is our metabolism is all of our chemical reactions in our cells. And you know we eat food to get energy. And if that energy, the energy that we get from our food is trapped in the form of ATP. And ATP energy can be used to make other cells. So in this example, what they're showing you is if I have small molecules, or let's start right here. I have large molecules. I just ate some pasta. Oh, so maybe I have some starch molecules. And there's all sorts of chemical reactions in my body that break that starch down into smaller molecules. And when you do that, you release energy, and that energy is used to make ATP. So ATP is our energy for our cells. And why do we need energy? Well, we put energy in and have the parts of molecules in our cells, and now I need to store some fat. So I need to make some fat or make some glycogen. And so you use that energy, you use ATP to take smaller molecules and make bigger ones. And so we'll talk about that again, but I just wanted to introduce you. So we have 3 types of nucleic acids. We have DNA, RNA, and ATP. And that's the end of the Chemistry of Life unit.